Hello, I'm Doug Benedict, and welcome to the Butler Esports interview series, where we're interviewing sports leaders, owners, and industry experts on the evolving world of esports. Today's interview is with Grant Zinn. Grant's past experience include roles in recruiting and marketing with Squarespace, and an associate esports producer with Bleacher Report. In January 2017, Grant founded beastcoast, where he is now CEO. Welcome, Grant.
Yeah, great to be here, Doug. Happy to share with you what I've learned over the past, I don't know, 10 years, whatever it is, long time, and hopefully get some young people excited about the world of esports.
Absolutely, that's why we do it.
hmm
So, I guess start us on that 10-year journey. What's your career journey look like?
Um, so for me, ever since I was a kid, I was always a huge gamer, really into esports, really passionate about the space. Um, really wanted to sort of enter the world of gaming and entertainment in any way that I could. I've always been competitive, and as esports started to emerge, I have been really sort of focused on sort of the intersection between competition and gaming. So I was following esports ever since I was a kid. I played Warcraft 3, I played Dota 1. Obviously, at that point, I was still in school, and back in my day, my parents were like, "Oh, becoming a pro gamer, that's not really a feasible career. You better, finish high school, go to college, do all that stuff." Um, so I finished high school. Uh, I did, while I was in high school, I actually worked on a game for Nintendo Wii. That was pretty fun when I was 16. I sort of thought that my career trajectory at that point was to go make games. And so I went to art school, did that for 3 years. It was a pretty awesome process to just learn more into building a game from a design perspective. Sort of had my first internship post, while I was in college. And I ended up doing, the very beginning of what, a designer does when they first start their career, which is very monotonous and tedious and boring. And which for me was I just put grass on trees and put leaves on trees and put grass on the ground. And that was my entire job for an entire summer. And I sort of asked my bosses, like, hey, you know, how long do I have to do stuff like this before I can be like someone who makes decisions and is creative and like puts their own ideas into the process? They were like, yeah, like 10 years. And I'm like, oh, well, I made a mistake. And so at that point, I decided that, the trajectory that I had chosen was not the right trajectory. I dropped out of college and I was like, oh no, I've made a wrong decision. I shouldn't have went to art school. Like, this was a big mistake. And then I sort of spent the rest of that, I transferred to Syracuse, did a semester there. It wasn't the right fit for me. Dropped out completely cold turkey. And then I was at home just like, I don't know what to do with my life anymore. And I applied for the first listing that I saw online when I was at my parents', which was at Squarespace. They were hiring someone in recruiting. If I had scrolled down a little bit farther on the job listing website, I would have seen that they were also hiring in marketing, which is where I would have preferred to be. But I interviewed for the recruiting job, went on 2 interviews. They hired me immediately. After that, basically sort of as part of the interview process, they wanted me to like internet look people up. They gave me a bunch of like keywords like, hey, where did this guy go to school? What coding languages does he know? What were his previous jobs? Like stuff like that. And they were like, find this person, we'll time you. And it took me like 10 seconds to find every person they threw at me because like I just grew up on the internet. It was really easy for me to look people up, reverse search, things like that. And that apparently was like the best time they had seen from anyone who had applied for the job. And other people had actually gone to school for recruiting and like, that was their focus. And for me, I was the guy who was internet savvy and it was like, this is the job that I applied for. So eventually they hired me. I worked in recruiting for 6 to 8 months, met a lot of cool people, did a lot of cool stuff, but that was not really where I wanted to be. So every day during lunch at Squarespace, I would eat lunch with the marketing team and like trade stories with them because that's where I really wanted to end up. Eventually my boss just sort of saw that I wasn't happy in recruiting, but saw that I was a really hard worker and just really, wanted to do something else. So he let me transfer to the marketing team, which was pretty differentiated at the time. Like no one really transfers departments, but he's like, hey, you're a go-getter, go get this. And so I was like, okay. So I did marketing, did a bunch of really cool stuff, did a bunch of very early stage esports related investments and sort of sponsorships on like the podcast, YouTube side, some Hearthstone stuff, very, very early stage stuff. This is 2015. So this was, a million years ago in esports. So I worked there, did a bunch of cool marketing stuff for a while, eventually decided that, my time has come. They hired a new CMO who didn't understand esports, and I knew that's where I really wanted to be. So I ended up leaving. After that, I did some consulting stuff for a little bit, but nothing major. Just still sort of figuring myself out. Eventually, I saw that Bleacher Report was hiring a producer to work on their new show called eStream, which was part of E-League. And I didn't really have any production experience, but I also was a guy who was just going to learn on the job and just was really passionate about esports. And they needed a brain for their show, just someone who knew about all the games, about all the opportunities, all the players, and just was, comfortable enough in a control room to figure out what was going on. And because I had gone to art school, I knew how to operate a camera and stuff like that. So they hired me for the show. That year, it was 2016. That year, I probably worked harder than I ever had in my entire life. I was getting to the studio every morning at 6 a.m., working the entire day, and then airing the show, and then writing the next day's episode. So I was like leaving at 11 p.m., getting there at 6 a.m. for an entire year. It was a ton of hard work, but it was really worth it. I was doing what I loved. At the end of 2016, the show got canceled by Turner, which sucked. And then afterwards, I sort of thought to myself, like, hey, I never want to be in a position again where I'm working so hard for someone else. So I'm going to start my own company. And then I spent 6 months figuring out what exactly that company was, what the company's name was, what we were going to do, how we were going to get started. And I started Beast Coast 6 months later with all my savings and just sort of stuck to it, growing slowly and sustainably until where we are today. So, very long-winded way. That's sort of been my road to where I am now.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess you kind of answered my next question is, why did you build Beast Coast? And so I'll combine it with another question of, what was the need that you built Beast Coast to fulfill that you saw, I guess?
So when I started Beast Coast 3 years ago, one of the big needs that I sort of recognized was that, there are a lot of teams out there, and still today there are a lot of teams out there that are primarily focused on winning. Like their MO is like, we win championships. And that's not, in my mind, a sustainable business because, only one team can win. If your entire season is focused on winning, then it's just like, if you don't win, what happens? You lose brand value, your fans get upset, whatever. And to me, gaming is all about fun. Esports is all about fun. Gaming is a hobby, and like people play at a variety of levels, from the extremely amateur to the most professional. And I think that so much of esports, especially at that time, were just laser focused on like the 1% ultra competitive esports gamer and didn't have any room for the more casual players, the more fun players. Like, hey, we're just here to have fun and play games and, do our best. Like that's sort of the thing that I thought was missing. I also thought that, especially at that time, not so much recently, but especially at that time, just so many problems were happening in the esports space where players were being mistreated, weren't getting paid, weren't being treated fairly, being abused. Like it was just, esports is still very nascent, but even then, 3 years ago, it was much worse. And so my sort of goal was to build a team that was player focused and, fun focused and really tell the story about like, hey, we're doing what we love every single day. And that's an amazing story and come be a part of that. And that's sort of how we got off the ground. And, when Beast Coast started, it was really just me and one of my friends who I tricked into working for free. She still works at Beast Coast, but now she gets paid, and 2 Smash Brothers players. And we really started from, the bottom of the barrel. When we first got started, on social media and online and on Reddit and stuff, people were like, who are these guys? Like, oh, another like one and done esports team. They'll be gone in a month. And every once in a while, it's fun for me to go back and look at those like threads and be like, still here, guys, still doing our thing, and it's been quite a journey, I would say.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what do you do? I'm assuming you're not producing a show every day now. So what do your daily responsibilities kind of look like?
Yeah. So I would say in the beginning, my daily responsibilities were everything. Now, much less. We have a whole team. Beast Coast is 15 full-time employees. I work with everyone pretty much hand in hand, from, managing our social media to figuring out what players to sign to helping to manage those players to working on our content and, our branding and things like that, merchandise. So I have my hand in everything. I would say, a lot of the process that I learned was that it's okay to not be good at everything. I think a lot of people have a sort of a problem with that. Like, oh, I can never start a company because I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to do that. Like there's so much stuff even today that I don't know how to do. But part of, building something that's all your own is having sort of the confidence to just sort of take on any challenge. And so like, as an example, for the first 2 years of Beast Coast, I just ran payroll myself. I don't know anything about running payroll. I don't know anything about, managing financials and things like that. And, in the beginning, it definitely wasn't easy, but, I did my best. And, I have a brain and I just put it to work and just sort of, did a lot of research, sort of self-education. And now we have people who actually do those things that I don't know how to do because they actually know how to do those things.
Yeah.
And it, makes my life easier to know that someone capable is handling the thing that I formerly was doing myself. But that's sort of, at the very beginning, you just have to be willing to do it all. I mean, I would say for now, I have a co-CEO, Brian Anderson. He sort of handles the revenue focused side of the business, the financial side of the business. He's a former investment banker. That's his sort of bread and butter. And then my side of the business is sort of everything that's not that. So talent acquisition, roster management, social media, content, branding, merchandise. I sort of oversee all those things. We work together on a lot of that stuff, but that's sort of where my sort of skill set really comes into play. And I think that's sort of where I feel the most confident, on a day-to-day basis, putting in my expertise, my background, into sort of my intuition to work. Absolutely.
Sounds like you put a lot of work into building Beast Coast. So, kind of since you have your hand in a little bit of everything here, this would be a great question for you of how has COVID disrupted what's going on over there, or has it disrupted what's going on over there?
So I would think it would definitely be a lie to say we've been unaffected. Everyone in the world has been affected. It's an awful thing that's happening these days. I think that I like to say that, esports is COVID resistant. We're not COVID immune. I think that a lot of the value that we've derived in the past has been from live events. And those live events that are happening in person are no longer happening. And we've pivoted to doing online events, which are still good. I mean, doesn't really compare to a packed stadium, but at least we have something, and we're proud of that. I think that for us, especially around COVID, we've had to restructure a lot and do things that maybe before we didn't have planned. I think for us at the time that COVID really hit, our Dota 2 roster was really beginning to come into their own on a global stage. It was right before ESL LA Major in California, which was the first ever Dota event in North America in a long time, and we were really excited. We had qualified. We had gotten top 8 at the first 2 Dota majors of the year. So we were on track to qualify for the international. Things were looking really good. We had a lot of content opportunities planned out in California that we were like getting ready to shoot. And then, I think probably a week or 2 before the live event, they just came down and were like, hey, event's canceled. It's COVID, guys. Like, this is a serious thing. And that was obviously a disappointment. We moved out of our office. Everyone is working from home now. That's been a learning process. Managing a team that's based in South America from North America when you can't go visit them and help them, and they have travel restrictions and COVID restrictions in place, has certainly been a big headache. But, I think that, our sort of guiding principles of we're player focused, we're fun focused, we're just going to do what we can to make the fans happy and keep our players happy and healthy, have guided us well through COVID. I don't think before COVID we ever really planned on running our own internal tournaments, but, we launched our own little Pokemon series at the beginning of COVID, which was pretty fun. Our content team had never done a project like that. And so having them take that on for them was just like a great challenge. And, it's things like that we have been, part of the thing that people say is that, when you're big, you're not agile. And one of the things that I really pride about Beast Coast is that we're just very agile. Like, if we see a challenge and we see an opportunity, like, we'll jump on it. Like, we're not scared of anything. And so, COVID for us has sort of been an exercise in that agility and in that, courage, just to be like, hey, this is a cool opportunity, let's just go for it. Right. And I think that other teams have been sort of hamstrung by what's going on in a way that we haven't been. And I think that's why a team like ours, which, is smaller than other teams out there, has been able to succeed and do things that are pretty interesting that, maybe other teams that are our size or were our sizes don't exist anymore because of COVID. And for us, it's been about working directly with our sponsors and with our partners, with our players, to make sure that, hey, even though we're all home, even though it's a pandemic, like, we're still going to do our best to entertain our fans and make new fans and be a team that people still care about. And I think that has sort of been a key principle during everything that's gone on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know COVID is recent news, but let's jump into even more recent news. And Techstars.
Sure.
You just entered the accelerators program, right?
Yes.
So what do you anticipate to gain, I guess, would be my question there.
Yeah. So for Techstars and Beast Coast, I think don't hold me to this, but I think Beast Coast is the first ever esports team to go through an accelerator program,
Mhm.
which is certainly something that we're pretty proud of. We are doing Techstars Sports, which is in Indiana, and it's definitely sports technology focused, which is great. Esports is sort of sports technology in a way. And for us, the thing that we really saw that would be valuable for Techstars is that Beast Coast is a business. We're not just like a passion project. We're not something like they're just like whatever, bro. Esports is fun. We're just here to have fun. Like we really want to build something sustainable. And by doing a program like Techstars, we can really make that happen. I'm a first time entrepreneur. My co-CEO Brian is a first time entrepreneur. All the people who work for us, maybe this is the first startup I ever worked at. We're all just doing our best every day, and we have a lot to learn. And I think that we're open to learning as much as we can from people in the TechStars program. So the first thing that we wanted to do when we did enter the program is like, hey, there's a lot of people here from traditional sports, from traditional media, who have like a wealth of experience and sort of just been there that we can draw on. And we were excited to sort of lean into that and learn what we could from them. The second thing is just expanding our network in traditional sports and in just technology. We've been able to grow and succeed based off of our existing networks, but we don't know everyone. We're young guys. We aren't the most connected people on planet Earth. So being able to, with these same people, get connected to people they know from Nike, Adidas, Puma, Under Armour, to the Colts, the Pacers, like it just opens a whole new world of Rolodex that we never really had access to. And I think the third thing is that it just really sets us up for success financially, to just have people who have all this experience and wealth of knowledge to look at our business and tell us, hey, this is what you're doing right. Hey, it's what you're doing wrong. Like, I don't know much about esports, but I know a lot about running a successful business. And these are some of the goals that you can learn from just talking to us. And I think all of that has been really, really great. I would say on the COVID side, I was really excited to move to Indy for the summer and get the in-person sort of mentorship that I think is just really important for a program like this. The program unfortunately pivoted to being remote for the most part. So I'm holding down the fort in New York. Brian, my co-CEO, is actually in Indy, but it's sort of a sacrifice we had to make given the state of the world to not be entirely in person, meeting with these mentors in person. Zoom is certainly something that exists, and we're happy to use it. We're using it right now, but certainly it doesn't compare to the real thing. And I think that that's just sort of one of the sacrifices that I think that we've had to make. I mean, luckily the program ran and we're in it and we're doing it and we're really enjoying it. But, I don't think it would have really compared to the program in person. Not to say that the program is bad by any means, it's amazing, but, it'd be even more amazing in person.
Yeah. No, and that's a great outlook. I know, obviously everything's affected by COVID, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, you spoke about this a little bit and kind of the whole mission and mantra of the organization, but what does it look like to be a player under the, Beast Coast name?
Interesting. I would say that, I personally, given that Beast Coast has really started from nothing, have done a lot of work to build a personal relationship for everyone who plays on Beast Coast. And I think that, for the few players that don't play for us anymore, they, I hope only have good things to say about their time here. And all the people who have been here, some going on 3 years now since day one. And, players that are on Beast Coast have had offers from bigger teams, but, I don't think that they would be getting the same level of sort of service and care that they get from us from a larger team, just because it's just not feasible. So in that sense, as a Beast Coast player, I would say that, definitely all of our players have been very loyal to the brand. They've been great people to have on the team. It's certainly important for a small esports team like us. I think that once you're on Beast Coast, after a few months, you really become like ride or die. Like, this is like my team. And I think that's definitely something that I'm really proud of. And I think every Beast Coast player like believes in the mission that I believe in, which is like, hey guys, we're small, but we're growing and we all know what we want. We want to be the best in the world and we'll do it together. And I think that's why we've been able to sort of go from, hey, we have 2 players and, 2 unpaid employees, one of which is me, to, hey, we have 15 full-time employees and 31 pro players all around the world. We have 7 sponsors. Like we're making waves. That's our like hashtag. We've really put that motto and mantra to life. And I think that every player on Beast Coast sort of lives that every day in terms of, we're all in this together.
Absolutely. That sounds great. So, I'm looking through your titles. How do you choose titles to compete in, entertain in? Is it just like who you find, or do you have a strategy going in saying these are the games we want to be involved with?
I would say it's a combination for sure. I mean, one of the big things that is important for a team like ours is sort of um, just figuring out what the right games are, right? I mean, in terms of esports, if you looked at esports 3 years ago and you started asking people, hey, what's the biggest game right now? Everyone would say, hey, it's this new game called H1Z1. Now H1Z1 doesn't exist, and even a year later, oh, it's PUBG. People still play PUBG, but it really fell under the power of Fortnite. And so for us, it's always been about where can we make the most impact and do the most good and make the most fans. And I think that, in a game like Fortnite, that was a great opportunity. I think that the reason why we didn't get into Fortnite was certainly because of saturation. For a small team like ours and all of the groundswell of just mainstream Fortnite sort of love and attention, we were rapidly sort of priced out of being a contender in that game. We can't compete with the venture-backed teams that are willing to throw down, hundreds of thousands of dollars or even more millions of dollars on, best in the world talent in games like those. So we've really had to be very strategic with the games that we play, and really know like, hey, this team, this player, this game, like we can get in for a price that makes sense for our company and grow with this roster and eventually, be profitable. And that's sort of been our big thing. I would say, the one thing for me in terms of like, I would have played this game no matter what, just because of my background. But, I've been playing Dota for as long as I can remember, starting with Warcraft 3, playing, Dota All-Stars, and now playing Dota 2. That's sort of the one game that I had the most experience and knowledge in. And I do think that Dota is a very valuable game to play and an important game to play just for a variety of reasons. But having a top in the world Dota roster was certainly a priority for us just because I love Dota so much. I mean, it just so happens that, beyond being a huge Dota fan, I've been playing that game for a million years, that Dota is a game that has an extremely passionate fan base all around the world. It has hundreds of thousands of people watch their live events. The International is the biggest esports tournament on the planet. I didn't just play it because I like it. I also played it because I think it's a good business opportunity. And I think that, us going down into South America to sign our current roster, the Beast Coast roster, that was formerly Ambrogasa, formerly Infamous, us going down there, I think, was indicative of our approach in terms of like, hey, this is traditionally an undersupported region. We think this region has the best talent in the world, and we can go down there and give this talent that previously did not have access to the level of support that we're able to provide, give them that access, give them that support, and to see what they can do. And these guys have been able to go and do that in spades. And we've been extremely happy with their performance and their success. And we think that they, are the future of sort of Dota. If you look at the Dota world map of where Dota is most popular, you have Europe, Russia, China, the obvious places. And then South America is right up there. So, if you go to Peru, if you go to Lima, Dota is the game. Everyone in Lima who plays games plays Dota. You go to a LAN cafe, everyone's playing Dota for a variety of reasons. Similar to Southeast Asia in that, it's a very LAN cafe focused ecosystem where, in North America, most people own personal computers. In South America, most people go to the LAN cafe, go to the LAN center. And on every single PC in the LAN center, they have Dota. And the reason why I have Dota, not League of Legends, is because in Dota, the game's free. Every champion is free. You can do whatever. Nothing costs money that, impedes your ability to play. You don't have to buy champs. And so everything's already unlocked. So it's just a really easy game to put in a LAN center. And that's why those games have blown up in those regions. And maybe less so in North America, where people play League of Legends, where you have to pay for all the champions. And so, for us, Dota was just that game in that region that, it was just like everything that made sense just coalesced and was like, this is the right opportunity for us. And, we're just so proud of our guys. We have a team house in Lima. Unfortunately, not all of our players are at it right now because of COVID. But, we've really gone down there and tried to do the best that we can for them. And they are doing the best they can for us. And so, when teams and organizations work together on that level, it's a recipe for success. And that's sort of why I think, Dota for us has been a big win, and maybe why potentially other teams who don't have as big as deep of an understanding of that ecosystem have steered clear of that game.
Yeah, interesting. I think that you just jumped into Valorant, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yes.
so you're taking the same kind of approach, I guess, the route, your thought process.
Yeah. So obviously, League of Legends is the most popular esport on the planet. If we could play League of Legends at a professional level, we would love to. Unfortunately, the franchise model exists. It's extremely expensive. Roster salaries are very expensive. Um, and so, for us, as it stands right now, as a company, we're sort of priced out of playing that game. But that's certainly a title we'd love to tackle in the future. And so, sort of looking at Valorant and looking at the sort of perfect position Riot Games put themselves in by creating Valorant. They sort of saw a game, CS:GO, which has been one of the most popular esports on the planet for decades or whatever. And they sort of saw, hey, CS:GO is potentially too violent, too realistic, too gritty for some mainstream sponsors. What if we build a game that's very similar to CS:GO, but different in a variety of ways, and put all of the power and sort of support of that Riot Games can offer behind it, and to see what we can do. And that became Valorant. And so we think that Valorant will have a similar trajectory to a game like League of Legends or even Counter-Strike in terms of its popularity. And if you look at it, even just being out for a couple months, it's already on that road. And so we thought it was an important game for us to play. Obviously, it's a very highly contested game. Everyone's talking about it. Everyone's interested in it. We're lucky to have great partners like Oris, who've been able to help us by working with us as our title sponsor on this roster, which has been great. And we think this roster has an immense amount of potential. We really went out of our way to sign young up and coming players who are just like 17, 18, early 20s, who just are at the beginning of their career. I think that not to throw any aspersions on any other teams, but a lot of other teams are looking at veterans of Counter-Strike, veterans of other games to play Valorant for their team. And we sort of look at it as, hey, it's a brand new game. There are players with experience, but a lot of these players played Fortnite, played PUBG. This is the beginning of their career. They have a long way to go, and this is a brand new game. And if this is a game that they can really get behind, this could be the future AAA talent of the game. So we went out and we signed not the biggest names on the block, but we signed some. Vegas was a former PUBG player. Elevate, we loaned him from 100 Thieves. Like, these are players that people know, but they don't know as much as like a Hiko or a Nitro or anything like that. But we think these players have immense potential, and once the ecosystem opens up where they're able to play at a very high level, they'll be able to really put us on the map in this new game and be another very high performing roster that we can be super proud of in a game that has so many eyeballs on it. And just from that perspective was, I think, very important for us to play as a company.
You brought up a really interesting tidbit there that I'm going to grab onto, your sponsorships. When it comes to like building a team or competitive play, how involved are your sponsors in that process?
Yeah. I mean, I would say that we like to treat our sponsors more like our partners. Our success is their success is our success. We want to work directly with them to have the best outcome for both parties. It's not so much like, hey guys, cut me a check, I'll slap you on our jersey and we'll call it a day. It's more like, hey guys, what do you want out of working with a team like Beast Coast? What can we do to make your goals a reality? And how can you make our goals a reality? And how can we grow together? And that's a conversation we have with every one of our partners. And I think that for some of them, that's not a conversation they have often, and they've been very happy to have that conversation. I think that, with my background and Brian's background, coming from traditional media and traditional banking and traditional sort of the real world per se, we're able to sort of bring that level of expectation and expertise to our partners. And I think that, in esports where everything is just very, ride 'em cowboy, by the seat of your pants, that's sort of not something that they've really had before. And so when we would talk about KPIs and performance metrics and what are the results that you need, that's a conversation they're happy to have, because, in the real world, that's a conversation you have all the time. And that was something that, I've just been really, really focused on having.
Absolutely. And this is probably the same kind of answer that you've given before. What do you think you all have gotten right about the professional competition of it all? Is it, how you treat your players, family mentality, or is it just like, I don't know, what's your secret to success, I suppose?
I think it's a combination. I mean, it's mentality, it's focus, it's passion, it's just the love of the games that we play. I mean, there's no really like definitive answer for success. I think we just all really want to be here, and that is what wakes us up in the morning every day. I mean, I don't think anyone who works in esports is working in esports because they're cashing a paycheck, right? This is not like banking or, maybe working at a huge company where you can just get a nice salary and go home and take a nap. This is an industry where, you're working weekends, you're working late nights, you're up, but you want to be up because you just love what you do. And I think that's what wakes up every single Beast Coast player and employee every day. They just really, really want to be here and really want to make the dream a reality.
So, $1 million question, right? What do you think the world, the industry, everything esports is kind of going to look like in 3 to 5 years?
I think that the teams that survive the next 3 to 5 years will be the teams that your grandkids know about, and that the teams that are still around back, in the far future. I think that it's very important for the teams that are around now to situate themselves for long-term success, because it doesn't happen what you do in the next 12 months. It doesn't happen what you do in the next 2 years. It really happens. It matters what you do over that longer period of time, right? If you're the most popular team in the world, but you're going to go bankrupt tomorrow, like that's just not how it works. I think a lot of teams that have failed have just went out and signed the biggest players they could afford and just assumed that, the money will come with it and the attention will come with it. And they've blown up big, but they've, went out with a whimper. You look at teams like Echo Fox, what happened to them. You look at even smaller teams that have, been like signed the best players they could afford. And then, they assume that, we'll just get some good results and I can go get some sponsors off that. But like holding yourself to that sort of timeline just doesn't make any sense. So being really pragmatic about the future, I think will dictate the success of every team that plays right now. I think that's what we're doing. And that's definitely something that is super important for our long-term success and the success of the entire industry. I also think that, a rising tide lifts all boats, and that as esports continues to get more and more popular, especially now during COVID when everyone is at home watching esports, the teams that are doing well will thrive, and the teams that are not doing well will take on water. And, we want to be that team that is able to receive the most benefit from the rising tide that is the industry, as well as the tailwinds of the success of the other teams. And I think that's what we've been doing already. And I think that is sort of situating us for the future.
Absolutely. So using your experience, what is some career advice that you could give to students, anybody watching who wants to get involved in the esports industry, whether it be doing what you do or esports industry somewhere else?
I think that if you're passionate about esports, there are a lot of great teams out there that you can work out now. It's definitely a lot more developed than it was when I was in college. But, also, don't be afraid. This industry is still so new. If you have a really great idea and a great team behind you, you could build something yourself, but it really comes down to, am I doing this because I think I'm going to get rich one day, or am I doing this because I love what I do? Right. I think that is sort of the thing that separates the entrepreneurs from the successful entrepreneurs. I mean, I think that a lot of people sort of say to themselves like, hey, this will make me rich. But, when push comes to shove, are you going to sit on the floor with a highlighter and go through, 60 pages of financial statements to make sure that, everything makes sense at the end of the year, because you're the only one to do it? I mean, that's something I had to do in the first year of Beast Coast because, we didn't have a CFO. We didn't have an accountant. I had to do it all myself. But I was willing to do that because like I was here, I knew that that's what the team needed. I knew that's what the company needed. So I was happy to do that work, and I'm always happy to do that work. And so, I think that if you're that type of person, if you really love esports and you really want to be here, you need to be able to sort of take on any challenge that might come your way, even if you go up and end up working for someone else. I mean, this is still such a nascent industry. You sort of have to be a jack of all trades and just be willing to accept and open to any challenge. And I think that's sort of the one thing that I would really sort of instill into a new graduate or someone who's graduating in the future, that you just really have to have a sense of autonomy, right? Don't wait for someone to tell you what to do. I know for a lot of students, you get told what your homework is, you get told what to read, you get told what to work on, but once your career starts, um, you really need to have the autonomy to make decisions for yourself. And I would say that's the most important thing that people need to focus on.
Absolutely. Sage advice.
Mm-hmm.
So the last question we ask everybody we have on here, we're looking for unique perspectives like the ones that you have just given us. So are there two people, organizations that you think we should go after, talk to, that could kind of give us some information on esports that isn't, I don't know, what everybody thinks about esports? Asking you to throw your friends under the bus, essentially.
Interesting. I would say, it might be interesting to talk to people on the data side of esports. The people who Elo Entertainment, they make Dota Buff, they make Overbuff, they make Fort Buff, which are like the big stat sites for those specific games. I think they have an interesting perspective on the state of the industry. And I would say on the other side of it, look at the ESLs of the world, the PGLs of the world, the third-party tournament organizers who, make these events a reality. I would say they have a very different perspective than the teams and the developers, because they exist in a space that I think is a little precarious for the future of the industry, not to throw them under the bus or anything, but it's certainly, an important part of our ecosystem. But, when people like Riot Games decide to run all their own tournaments and and ESL can't run League of Legends tournaments anymore, where does that leave them? I mean, that's a whole area that they know very well. And I would say that's an interesting sort of perspective that might be worth looking into.
Absolutely. Well, that was all the questions I had for you. Thank you for sharing your time with us, Grant, CEO of Beast Coast. Stay safe, stay well, go Dogs.
Yep, great to be here. Thanks for having me, and hope everyone enjoys. Happy to help.